Have you noticed quiet changes in someone close to you? Maybe your aging parent, your longtime companion, or even yourself? Perhaps it's the way your father's clothes hang a bit looser these days, or how your mother's nap stretches longer into the afternoon. Maybe your spouse, once sharp and lively, now pauses mid-sentence, struggling to find the right word. Most people think the end of life arrives suddenly, with a fall, a diagnosis, or a final breath. But in truth, the body often begins saying goodbye slowly, not with alarms, but with whispers. It might start with skipped meals, longer silences, a gentle pull away from the world, day by day, moment by moment. The hardest part is that these signs often seem small, just normal aging, we say, until one day, looking back, we realize the signs were there all along. But if we learn to see them now, not in fear, but in love, we can prepare. We can soften the path ahead. We can bring more comfort, more presence, and more peace to those we care for, or even to ourselves. This video isn't here to frighten you. It's here to help you notice and to honor the quiet truths of aging with dignity. Because when we recognize these signs for what they truly are, we don't lose hope. We gain time, we gain awareness, and we gain the sacred chance to love more gently while time still allows. So if you've ever wondered whether something is shifting, whether an aging loved one is slowly approaching life's final chapter, stay with us. Today, we'll gently walk through 5 subtle signs that may appear in the final year of life, so you can walk this season with clarity, tenderness, and grace. It was a chilly afternoon in early March when Helen noticed her father's old cardigan, the one he always wore while reading, hanging untouched on the coat rack. It had been weeks since he'd reached for it. Weeks since he'd taken his usual seat by the window, where the late sun spilled across the floor and he'd sip chamomile tea while flipping through the paper. At first, she didn't think much of it. He was 87. He had good days and slow days. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe winter had made his bones a little heavier this year. But then the changes began to string together like quiet pearls on a necklace. His pants were looser, though he hadn't changed his diet. His favorite puzzles, once finished in an afternoon, now sat untouched for days. Sometimes she'd ask him a question, and he'd look at her for a moment too long, as if wading through fog. And then there were the naps. Long, still naps that bled from morning to afternoon. She'd call his name softly, and he'd stir, smiling faintly but slower to respond. He wasn't in pain. He wasn't complaining. He just seemed distant, like he was slowly untethering from the day-to-day, one thread at a time. Helen tried to brush it off. It's just old age, she told herself, but deep down, a part of her, the part that had always known her father's rhythms, felt something different. This wasn't just aging. This was a transition. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. And in that soft knowing, something else stirred, a quiet grief mixed with a deeper, more urgent kind of love. She stopped trying to bring him back to the way he used to be. Instead, she sat with him more. She listened more than she spoke. She didn't ask him to finish meals or stay awake longer. She just held his hand. And in that silence, something sacred bloomed. Because even though he was drifting, he was still there. And even as his body prepared to let go, her love didn't have to. This story, Helen's story, is one many of us will live through, in some form or another, whether it's your parent, your spouse, your sibling, or even yourself. The signs aren't always loud, but they are there. And when we learn how to recognize them, we stop feeling helpless and start holding space with greater compassion. So now, let's explore those 5 quiet signs that may appear in the final year of life, not to alarm you, but to guide you. Because when we know what to look for, we're better able to give what matters most: presence, peace, and love. Sometimes, the first sign that something deeper is shifting isn't dramatic at all. It's just a belt that suddenly fastens tighter than usual, a favorite sweater that hangs more loosely around the shoulders, or a dinner plate that returns to the kitchen still mostly full. At first glance, it's easy to explain away. They're just eating less. Maybe they're not as hungry as they used to be. They've always been thin. It's just aging. But unintentional weight loss in older adults, especially when it happens gradually over months, is often the body's quiet way of preparing for its final chapter. This isn't about dieting. It isn't about lifestyle choices. It's about the body beginning to slow down from the inside out. As we age, our digestive system becomes less efficient. The body may stop absorbing nutrients the way it once did. Muscle mass, which once provided strength, stability, and stamina, begins to fade. And appetite, that familiar pull toward food, it starts to vanish, sometimes without warning. Food no longer smells the same. Favorite meals lose their taste. And for some, eating becomes more of a task than a pleasure. But this change goes deeper than flavor or preference. In many cases, the body is subtly shifting its priorities. It's no longer focused on rebuilding strength or maintaining reserves. It's conserving, slowing, preparing. And yet, families often react the way we all would, with love and urgency. We offer more snacks. We cook their favorite meals. We plead just a few more bites. And sometimes it works, for a while. But when the weight continues to fall despite our efforts, It's not about willpower anymore. It's not about the food. It's about the body letting go. This isn't to say we stop feeding or caring, quite the opposite. But our focus begins to shift from more calories to more comfort, from eat everything to eat what feels good, from fixing to supporting. In this stage, gentle foods that are easy to chew, small portions offered frequently, and plenty of hydration can offer more than nourishment. They offer dignity, because forcing food when the body is no longer asking for it can cause discomfort. But sitting together at mealtime, even for a few bites, can still be meaningful. And here's the deeper truth. Losing weight at this stage is not just about the physical body. It's often a sign that energy is retreating, not in fear, but in preparation. It's the body's way of saying, I no longer need as much to carry me. For families and caregivers, recognizing this shift can be painful, but it also offers a moment, a choice, to stop wrestling against what is, and instead, to sit in peace beside it, to offer presence instead of pressure, to hold a hand rather than a fork, to honor the quiet fading without fear. There's a kind of tiredness that rest cannot fix, not the kind that comes from a long walk, not the kind that follows a restless night, but a deeper kind, soft, quiet, and constant. You may have seen it in someone you love, or perhaps you've begun to feel it in yourself. It starts with small things. The newspaper stays folded. The tea grows cold before it's finished. Getting dressed feels like climbing a hill, and one day even walking across the room becomes something to think about, not just do. This kind of fatigue isn't just aging, it's the body slowly downshifting. It's what happens when the heart isn't pumping as strongly, when circulation is a little slower, when the muscles, once sturdy and reliable, begin to ask for rest more often than movement. The body, in its wisdom, begins to conserve. Sleep stretches longer. Naps become necessary, and moments of alertness begin to flicker in and out like sunlight through leaves. Loved ones may notice this change and feel a deep concern. They might say, let's go outside, the fresh air will wake you up. Or, come on, you'll feel better if you just move around a little. And while these suggestions come from love, they often miss the truth of what's really happening. The body is protecting itself. It's no longer pushing toward doing, it's pulling inward, toward being. This shift can be heartbreaking to watch, especially in someone who once took pride in being active, independent, full of energy, to see them sleeping more, withdrawing more, letting go of the things that once filled their days. But here's what's important to remember. This deep fatigue isn't laziness. It isn't weakness of will. It's a biological process, slow, natural, and often peaceful, where the body begins to honor its limits. Trying to push through it rarely helps. What helps is presence, softness, permission. Let them rest, let them sleep, let them drift in and out without guilt or expectation. And when they are awake, be there, not with plans or pressure, just with gentleness. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer someone who's deeply tired is the space to simply be tired, without judgment. Because in those quiet stretches of stillness, between naps, between words, between breaths, something sacred is happening. The body is slowly closing the day, not in despair, but in peace. It often begins so subtly, you wonder if you're imagining it. A familiar face looks puzzled for a moment longer than usual. A name is forgotten, not just once, but again and again. The days of the week become tangled. Conversations trail off mid-sentence like clouds fading into a quiet sky. These changes in memory and thinking aren't just forgetfulness. They're signs that the brain, like every other part of the body, is beginning to slow. You might notice your loved one repeating the same story within minutes, or asking, "Where are we going again?" after you've just told them. They might pause in a familiar room, unsure of where they were heading. And sometimes they might simply stop talking altogether, not out of rudeness, but exhaustion. The brain, in its final season, begins to work differently. Blood flow may be reduced. Oxygen isn't delivered as efficiently. And just like weak muscles, a tired mind needs more rest, more quiet, more patience. But perhaps even more striking than forgetfulness is emotional withdrawal. The person you've known for decades may begin to retreat. Not in anger, not in fear, but as if the outside world has grown just a little too loud, a little too complicated. They speak less, respond less. They no longer light up when the grandchildren visit. They may even seem indifferent to things that once deeply mattered to them. Birthdays, holidays, family traditions. To outsiders, it may look like they no longer care. But inside, something else is happening. The brain is simplifying. The world is becoming quieter. And for some, the space within becomes more familiar than the space around. This can be one of the most difficult signs for family members to witness. It can feel like losing someone before you've truly lost them. You may find yourself trying to pull them back. Don't you remember? Come join us. It'll be fun. You used to love this, but here's something tender to hold on to. They haven't stopped loving you. They haven't stopped being them. They're just walking deeper into the forest now. And sometimes what they need most is not to be pulled out, but to be gently accompanied. Sit beside them, speak softly, hold their hand, play music they once loved, even if they don't respond. Your presence may reach them in ways that words no longer can. And even when they forget who you are, they can still feel your kindness, your warmth, your love, because long after names fade, love does not. There's a moment when you realize the little things are no longer little. A small scratch on the arm doesn't heal as quickly. A cough lingers longer than it used to. A mild cold turns into a visit to the hospital. You may start noticing this pattern. Your loved one, who once bounced back from illness with ease, now seems to catch everything, and when they do, recovery feels slower, harder, less certain. This is not just getting older, it's a sign that the body's natural defenses are growing weary. The immune system, once quietly working in the background, begins to struggle. White blood cells don't respond as quickly. Healing slows. Inflammation lingers. Suddenly, everyday challenges, a urinary tract infection, a touch of the flu, a bruise on the shin, become hurdles the body can't clear the way it used to. Wounds stay open longer. Bruises appear more easily and fade more slowly. And sometimes the first sign of infection isn't a fever. It's confusion, fatigue, or a drop in appetite. You might not even notice it at first. They just seem off, a little quieter, a little weaker. Not quite themselves. In younger years, an infection was a temporary pause. But in this stage of life, each infection can feel like a step further down a path, a gentle, irreversible progression. Families understandably want to act. We try antibiotics. We call specialists. We ask, what more can we do? And sometimes treatment helps, briefly. But as infections become more frequent and healing becomes slower, a quiet truth begins to surface. The body is no longer fighting the way it once did, because it's starting to let go. This doesn't mean we stop caring, far from it, but our care may begin to shift, from curing to comforting, from fixing to easing, from resisting decline to honoring the person in front of us right where they are. Clean, hydrated skin, fresh bed sheets, a quiet room, a gentle hand on their forehead. These things become medicine too, sometimes more powerful than pills. And when recovery slows, it's not always a problem to solve. It's sometimes a story to witness, the final chapters unfolding, with tenderness, with dignity, with fewer answers and more presence. Sometimes it's the sound of breathing that changes first. You might be sitting beside someone you love, reading quietly, sipping tea, and notice that their chest rises slower than usual. Or perhaps you hear long pauses between breaths, a faint rattle, a soft wheeze. Breathing that once seemed effortless now feels labored, irregular, shallow, sometimes startling in its stillness. This can be one of the most intimate, most tender signs that the body is moving toward life's final stage. It's not always dramatic. In fact, it often begins subtly. A soft mouth breathing while resting, a sigh that turns into a quiet struggle for air after standing up. Many families assume it's a cold, or asthma, or maybe just fatigue. But often this shift in breathing signals something deeper. The heart and lungs, which have worked together for decades, are slowly easing their rhythm. The body in its quiet intelligence begins redirecting energy inward. Circulation slows. Blood moves more slowly to the hands, feet, nose, and ears. And you may notice those areas becoming cool to the touch, or even turning pale, bluish, or mottled. It can be startling to see. The hands you've held for a lifetime, now colder, thinner, more fragile. But this, too, is part of the body's way of preparing. The heart begins to preserve energy by focusing only on what is most vital. You might notice your loved one gets winded after standing, or they suddenly prefer her to sleep propped up with pillows because lying flat feels too heavy on the chest. Their voice may grow fainter. They may pause in conversation just to catch their breath. And over time, the breathing pattern may begin to follow a gentle wave, quickening, slowing, pausing, returning again. Some call it Cheyne-Stokes breathing, but to a family sitting nearby, it just sounds like something is changing. Something final, but not frightening. Not if we understand what's truly happening. In these moments, what matters most isn't oxygen tanks or medications, though sometimes they help. What matters most is comfort. A quiet room with soft light. A cool cloth on the forehead. A whispered "I'm here" in the space between breaths. This is a time for presence, not panic. Because even though the body is slowing, the spirit is still listening, even when words are gone. Your presence is a kind of breathing, too. So if you notice these changes, cooler hands, pale skin, unsteady breath, don't rush to fix. Pause. Sit near. And know you are witnessing something sacred. The body is not failing, it is finishing. And just like the final notes of a lullaby, it deserves to fade gently in peace. There's something quietly humbling about witnessing the slow changes we've spoken of. Not the loud ones, not the hospital calls or emergency rooms, but the gentle shifts. A smaller appetite, a longer nap, a quieter voice. Each one, a soft reminder that time is moving, even when the clock doesn't tick any louder. We spend most of our lives learning how to hold on. We fight for youth. We preserve strength. We chase after life with calendars and schedules and hopes, and then comes a season that teaches us something new. How to let go. With love, with dignity, with grace. For many of us, these signs, the weight loss, the fatigue, the drifting mind, the fragile breath, stir something deep. Fear, yes, but also longing, a longing to get it right this time, to be more present, to not wait until the last day to say what matters most. If you've ever lost someone, you might know this feeling well. Looking back, wondering if you missed the signs, wishing you had sat longer, spoken softer, asked more questions, held their hand one more time. But here's the quiet grace. You are here now. And that means you're not too late, because recognizing these signs isn't about predicting death. It's about deepening life in its final stretch. It's about knowing when to stop rushing, when to sit still, when to set the to-do list aside and just be there. It's about making peace with the mystery of it all, the way someone can still teach us, even as they fade. The way love doesn't end when the breath does. The way presence, real presence, can become the most sacred kind of medicine. Whether you are noticing these signs in someone you love or in yourself, may this reflection remind you, you are not alone, and this season, while tender and often painful, is also full of meaning. Let it be slow, let it be soft, let it be filled with forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. Because in the end, what we remember is rarely the diagnosis or the timeline or even the final goodbye. What we remember is the way it felt to sit beside them, the way the light came through the curtain that one quiet afternoon, the way their hand rested in yours, still warm, still human, and how, in that stillness, love didn't leave. If you've made it this far, thank you, truly. It means you care. It means someone's life, or perhaps your own, matters enough to be witnessed with tenderness. The 5 signs we've explored today: unexplained weight loss, deep, persistent fatigue, cognitive shifts and quiet withdrawal, frequent infections that linger, changes in breath and circulation, they are not meant to scare you. They're meant to guide you, because with awareness comes presence, and with presence comes peace. So if these signs feel familiar, pause. Not in panic, but in purpose. Let this be your reminder to say what you've been meaning to say, to slow down when your instinct is to hurry, to sit a little longer, even if the room is silent. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need the right words. You don't need to fix what cannot be fixed. You just need to be there, with love in your voice and softness in your eyes. Because for someone in their final chapter, your calm, gentle presence might be the most sacred gift they'll ever receive. And if this message touched something quiet inside you, you're gently invited to stay with us. Here at Comfort Corner, we create a space for stories like yours, for the silent questions, the sacred goodbyes, the soft what now moments that come with aging, caregiving, and letting go. Subscribe if you'd like to walk this path with others who understand. Leave a comment if there's a name you want to whisper into the world, or simply stay a while, if that's all your heart can manage today. We're not here to fix you. We're here to sit beside you in the hard parts, the holy parts, and the in-between. Take gentle care of yourself, and when you're ready, we'll be here again. From our heart to yours. Thank you.